that better? Okay. All right, very good. So happy to be with you guys. I always start my talk with a legal disclaimer. The thoughts and views represented here in this talk do not necessarily reflect the thoughts of the Archdiocese of New York. I'm speaking on my own right. You get it, right? Legal disclaimer. There we go. Good. And so tonight's talk, it's hard to follow Christopher West. Can you feel me on that? So Christopher West was the speaker last week, an amazing speaker, and I was just like, oh man, I come after him. So a few things. This talk will definitely not be as rich. This is a much more practical level talk. I'm one of those people that like, I've always worked with a lot of dreamers, people that dream big dreams, and I'm the practical person that I'm like, okay, now how, right? And I've always been the kind of person that goes to like a talk, and I'm like, great, you sold me on the idea. I totally want to do that. How? Yeah? So this is more of a think about it, how kind of talk. So the title of the talk is Vice, Virtue, and Relationships in a Digital Age. Yeah? And the older young adults here are going to be like, this does not apply to me. I remember when there was no internet. I remember when the internet became, you've got mail. Like, yeah. But all of us deal in this digital world, so it applies to all of us. And this is really a spin-off from a talk that I gave a few weeks ago. But since giving that talk, that happened in a very spur-of-the-moment kind of way, I've really been praying and thinking about this topic a lot, and actually having a lot of conversations about this topic. And I thought this might be a good thing to bring here to New York's level of responsibility. So, why am I talking about what seems like a kind of trivial thing? Like, who cares about my digital life, right? So one of the reasons is why we have a lot of examples of, holy examples of saints in different aspects of life, right? If you want to see, like, how does someone live a virtuous life at work? Well, we got like tons of saints that can show us about that. If I want to be an amazing single, if I want to live out this, like, being single, how do I do that? There are saints that you could refer back to. If you're married, there are married saints that you can refer back to as a student, in all of these different aspects of life. But the digital age that we are in is so new that it takes time. It's worth it to start to consider these things in the light of wanting to grow in sanctity. So hopefully this is a talk that will give you something to consider and bring to prayer. And just a reminder that this is something that Father Casey spoke about a couple of weeks ago. The big sins, they don't just happen all of a sudden. A big sin doesn't show up in your life and it's all like a vampire, once it's up your blood. Like, that doesn't happen normally. Normally there's a buildup of things that lead to something bigger. And our digital lives are one of those little things that can build up into something bigger. And something for all of us to consider, God could have chosen us to be born at any time in human history. But he chose this time, this age, with all of its technology, with all of its craziness, with all of its comfort, all of it. He chose us to be alive here in this time. And we know, I'm sure we've all heard this, that God is also calling all of us to be saints, right? To be saints, to be holy, to be set apart, to be different. And so it would be cruel of God to say, hey, I want you to become a saint, and then be like, but it's impossible in this age. Right? That would have been awful. And that's not the way that God is. God is our good and loving Father. So he desires, he calls us to this because it is possible. So so that it leads me to think, how would a saint live in these modern times, in this modern digital age that we're living in? And the answer for the saints is always by practicing radical virtue, heroic virtue. And so that's why the talk is kind of framed in this way, in thinking about considering the vices, the temptations out there, and then considering the virtues to to try to put into practice to not fall into the vices. And of course, I can't go through this talk without giving a shout out to Blessed Carlo Acutis, right? Woo! I mean, come on, pop culture Catholics, y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Recently beatified, who did live in the digital age, and he was a young kid, died in 2006, and he had a massive love for the Eucharist, just a beautiful love for the Eucharist, and he loved computer games, but he would only allow himself to play 1 hour a week, and then he would spend time dedicating it to helping children, to helping the elderly, and to helping the poor. And a lot of his digital time was spent promoting Eucharistic miracles. So, yeah, there's somebody in the works towards the process of canonization that did live in these times and definitely practice virtue. But if we take a step further, why does this really matter to even look at this? And at the end of the day, it's because even though the digital world does not make it seem as this, each person that I have contact with, all of my 2,000 Facebook friends, my however many Instagram followers, TikTok followers, all the people on my contact list, all of them are unrepeatable, precious masterpieces of God, made in the image and likeness of God, held in existence by the love of God, and for whom our blessed Lord died. So all of these thousands of interactions, while I mean, when you're scrolling through and you see, oh, Aunt Patty just posted another cat video, like you're not really thinking about like the whole humanity of this person but these are people that we're constantly in contact with. And honestly, relationships have changed in such a short amount of time. Even since the outbreak of the pandemic, the way that we relate to people. I mean, I know that for me as an introvert, there were part of us that I was like, hey, this is kind of nice. I just get to stay at home and nobody expects me to go out. Like, it's like all my plans have been canceled. Yes. But I know for some of my extroverted friends, on the other hand, they had a little bit more of a struggle with it, where they're just like, I need to see people. But either way, relationships have changed. How we deal with people has changed. And even for those of us who have really delved deeper into just being more involved in the digital world, that's still my neighbor. That's still someone that I'm called to love. So we're going to apply these vices and virtues to this idea. And if you didn't listen to Father Casey's talk, I highly encourage it. But this one is more concentrated specifically on the digital world. So I'm going to go through the 7 deadly sins, or often associated with the big vices, and then the virtue to practice in its place. Cool? Yeah. So, so disclaimer, I am Dominican. My family is from the Dominican Republic, so you will often hear little Dominicanisms thrown into my talks. Just like right now, I said, okay, vamos, heavy, because that's a very Dominican thing to do. Hey, culture is something that it's a joy, it's a gift to the church to share with that. So, here we go. Lust. So, in Love and Responsibility, we talk a lot about lust. What is it? So, it's this intense desire, usually for sexual pleasure, but it could be for other things, that leads to an objectification of those around me. And there are so many dangers in our digital environment for this. I mean, if you've ever heard one of Matt Fradd's talks, we've had him here many, many times on the dangers of pornography and how destructive it could be for all of our relationships, just dealing with myself, my relationship with God, my relationship with others. Totally something to look at, but not just pornography. A couple weeks ago, I was scrolling through my normal Facebook feed as I start the day, and there was one of these TikTok challenges that was shared in different places. And I won't go into the specifics of the challenge, but basically there was a girl, she was pretending like she was going to be naked, but she actually had clothes on underneath. And the whole point of the challenge was kind of to scandalize the men in her life. And in every single instance, many, many women, the man always ran to protect her from exposing her nakedness to the world. And I was thinking about that and thought to myself, interesting, because I'm sure that some people will say, that's just the patriarchy. They're just trying to keep her from doing what she wants with her body. But then I thought about this further, and I was like, you know what? If it was a friend of mine, and I thought she was just about to expose her body to the world, I would jump up too. And you have to, like, in these videos, the guys were like, stepping on the cat, they were breaking glass, like everything to jump to cover the girl. Because there's something inside of us instinctually that knows it's not that the body is bad, and it's, in fact, it's very good and very beautiful. And I was thinking, if it was one of my friends, a female friend, it has nothing to do with patriarchy. It's that I believe that she is good and she is beautiful, but humanity is broken. And the truth is, we can't handle it. We can't handle the naked form in front of us without objectifying it often. Ideally, before the fall, they were naked and without shame. Adam and Eve were naked and without shame. But so in the beginning, it wasn't so that if I saw a naked form in front of me, before the fall, you could see it and without objectifying the person. But after the fall, unfortunately, this is one of our struggles. And so in this digital world, there's objectification that we allow to happen to us, that we might allow to happen to us, or that we see in others. And it's a constant temptation because there's popularity sometimes associated with that. There's many pressures. An additional temptation in the digital world when it comes to lust is the idea of basically post-mating or door-dashing affection. All right? Here's the scenario. It's 3 a.m., you are asleep, and you get a ding notification, hey, you up? That's never of the Lord. Unless the person's saying, hey, you up? Because I want to go to the Perpetual Adoration Chapel. Which, as we know, is probably not always the case. It's these interactions, I want affection, but I don't want the person associated with the affection. I don't want the whole history of the person. I don't want to deal with the good parts, the bad parts, the ugly parts, the broken parts. I just want this moment in the person's life, which is to objectify this person to just be this moment and nothing else, without wanting the totality of them. So what's the counter virtue to lust? It's chastity. Is to recognize the full goodness of this person in their totality and seek, and just for their own being, not for my use. So, the idea of not objectifying the person in front of me, and thinking about, okay, when I send this text, when I do this thing, is it just because I'm for my use, or is it for their own good? Or shaming another person's objectification. Sometimes you see something and you're just like, can you believe that this person... Stepping away from these things. Or you yourself allowing yourself to be objectified. And then there's the real concept of promoting the goodness of others, wanting heaven for others in such a way that even if it costs me what I want in this second, I want heaven for them more. So, yeah. We'll move on. Envy. Okay. So you hear about this one a bit more with the digital world. Envy defined as sadness or desire for the possessions, happiness, talents, or abilities of another. In the digital world, we struggle with comparing ourselves to false representations or just little snippets of people's lives. Where it's like, oh, these people are having so much fun. Or they're so cool. There's also an idea of being angry or annoyed at the success of another. Yeah, and that this could become a real thing. I, as someone who has struggled in my life with fertility, I can tell you that there are times where I'm seeing like the whole world apparently get pregnant, and there is a part of me that's just like, but I'm happy for you, but it's a real thing to struggle with these feelings of envy when you see the good that's happening in others. And then there's also the reverse of that, delighting in the pain of others. Now, again, I told you I'm Dominican, right? Once upon a time, when I was a little girl, my mom, if I would do something foolish and get hurt, the phrase was always, bueno que te pase. Good that it happened to you. But unfortunately, the kind of idea of thinking is like, you deserve that. Good, I'm glad that happened to you. This kind of delighting in bad things happening in the lives of others. All of this feeds into this envy. And it's something that, in truth, we got to bring to the Lord and expose to the light. And what's the counteracting virtue for that? It would be gratitude. All of us have something to be grateful for. The fact that we are all here and breathing is a gift. Right? I mean, in this year more than ever, just acknowledging the gift of being alive. That's something to be grateful for. And always, knowing the love of God is a gift. The people in my life, they're a gift. The gift of gratitude. When those moments of envy come upon me, to stop and say, but in my life right now, what is good? What is happening? How's God moving? What is the gift? To move on. Now, these are coupled, gluttony, greed, which is the overindulgence or being super preoccupied with all things virtual. Sometimes you stop enjoying the person in front of you, the moment in front of you, because you're so preoccupied with the digital world. The real world is just a prop stage for my digital persona. You know, some of us could be tempted to this, where I am using everything around me because I'm trying to project something. And what motivates me in that, oftentimes, I can't get enough affirmation. I'm just craving all of this affirmation. Need to get more likes, more comments. I just want to feel that I'm seen. And it becomes insatiable. Largely because we were made for the infinite. And we humans are great at trying to stuff that desire, that need for the infinite with the finite. Like, we are masters at that. We find ways to make of anything something to stuff that God-shaped hole. Whether it's the constant scrolling, whether it's the constant need of information, whether it's the not being able to stay still, it becomes very consuming. So, what virtue should I try to practice? And that would be the virtue of temperance. So temperance is the virtue that disposes us to avoid every kind of excess. So how do I do that practically? I told you guys, I'm a practical person. One way is monitoring the digital time, or creating a space. Like, this is my non-digital space. If it's the room, if it's the living, whatever, a space that is not consumed with all that is digital. Then it's the realization that every person, every moment is a gift. And taking time to enjoy it, not necessarily posting about it. Have you ever been in the situation where you're just like, oh my goodness, that's the most amazing sunset ever! And then you're like, let me take out my camera, everybody has to see this right now. Right? Do they actually? Do they need to see that right now? Or it could be a moment that is just supposed to be for you and the Lord. And I'm not saying that it's bad, that this is a bad thing in and of itself. But to have this constant need to have to post it to the whole world, it becomes the lack of temperance, it becomes the gluttony, it becomes the greed for not being able to stop oneself. It's a lack of self-mastery. So, can I take a picture and post it later so that way I can enjoy the moment? If I'm out with my friends, could I possibly have this conversation and not be on my phone? Can I interact with family and just let it be this? Just let it be this moment, this gift. Do I recognize the gift of the moment? Do I recognize the gift of the person before me? And realize that ultimately, we are all in need of the Father's affirmation. Like that, the affirmation that we're all looking for, really, ultimately, it's the depth of us wanting to hear this I love you from God the Father, which He's always saying to us, if we would stop and listen. If we stop the scrolling, if you just stop for a minute. That sunset you wanted to post, it was an I love you. These people that He's placed in your life, it's His I love you. The gift that you are alive in this moment, right now, in this space, right here, it's His I love you. And that's ultimately the real affirmation we desire. And yet, do we need human affirmation? Sure, we do. But I would like to pose this thought. Affirmation, human affirmation, means the most when it comes from someone who doesn't just see my highlight reel. It means the most when it comes from someone who sees the broken, the ugly, the not so great, but can really see me as the gift that I am. Like, yeah, does it feel great that when you posted a great picture and then you're like, notification, yeah, like, look at all those likes. Yeah, does that feel good? Sure, it does. But it can't compare to my husband who sees the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, affirming me. That those two things, and the digital world is just not made for that depth. The depth that is vulnerability. To be vulnerable is to be woundable. And so oftentimes in these digital relationships, I want the fun side of it, but I don't want the woundable side. I don't want the vulnerable side. And so it's a good thing to stop and think, how many relationships where I can be truly vulnerable, how many relationships do I have where I can be truly vulnerable? And you don't have to have 1,000, but there should be some where I can just be all of me, the good, the bad, the ugly. Going back to lust, that's one of the problems with lust, that a person might just want this moment of your life for this self-interested thing, but they don't want the good, the bad, and the ugly. They don't want the full story. They don't want the full person. But as a beloved child of God, we deserve to be loved in that way. It's the love that most closely resembles the love of God the Father. Because He sees the good, the bad, and the ugly. When we go to confession, boy, does He see the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And He loves us. There's nothing that we can do that can separate us from that love. So, something to ponder. When in practicing temperance, can I refrain from trying to seek all of my affirmation in this way? And stop and truly receive the Father's affirmation in my life? All right, moving on. We're going to sloth, or sloth. I don't know. How do you say it? Sloth? Sloth? Sloth. Okay. So, AKA can be, some people just put it as laziness, but it's a disinterest or a neglect of higher things. And my goodness, does our digital life lead us to sloth or sloth? We can be very lazy in our friendships. The Bible says that whoever finds a friend has found a rare treasure. If that's true, then texting once a year or twice a year might not be the best way to cultivate this treasure, this gift. we can spend so much of our time in frivolous conversation and debate that we don't actually appreciate the people that are around us. Or spending excessive leisure time, hello, binge watching, excessive leisure time that I neglect the duties of my life, right? I mean, has it ever happened to you that, like, on Friday, you're like, okay, right, so I have the day off tomorrow, Saturday I am going to clean, I need to do laundry, I'm totally going to call my grandma because I've been meaning to call her for like 5 weeks, right? And you're like, yeah, and I'm going to pray, yeah. And then Saturday comes and you're just like, this is going to be the 35th episode of The Office that I'm watching now. Oh, wow, it's 9 o'clock. Never mind, no laundry. Has that ever happened to you? It certainly has happened to me before. And the problem with, like, it seems like everybody does it kind of thing, but it's something to watch out for. The opposing virtue, the true virtue that we should be striving for is diligence. So it's the effort to do one's part while keeping faith and reliance in God, right? So at the minimum, get through the necessary things and then do the leisure things, right? Because what can happen in this disordered way is that I can end up wasting my whole life in this digital world that at the end of the day doesn't really, it's not leading me to anything. So to put things in the context, okay, first, let me get through the necessary things, the things that I've committed to, the things that I've said, this is important. And then let's go to leisure. Another thing to keep in mind is if I'm going to be in this digital world, if I'm going to be scrolling through, pray. Like, has this happened to you before that you're scrolling through and someone's like, someone's post is like, can you please pray for me? And you're like, oh, no, I don't want to do that right now. Yeah. See, there's laughs in the crowd. Those are not honest people being like, yep, been there. Right? You're scrolling and you're just like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. But it's an actual human, like a child of God asking for prayer. Would it really cost much to stop and say a Hail Mary? Or a Glory Be? Or just, Lord help that person. Would it cost a thing? No. There was one time I was for work at this talk. Father Enrique Salvo, awesome priest, was giving this talk on purgatory. And truly, I was only there because I had to be, because it was like, I had to be there for work. So I was like, not that I don't love the souls in purgatory, but it wasn't like totally a topic that I was jazzed about. Like, I mean, if I would have started the talk today, I'd be honest, if I would have started the talk today, I would be like, okay guys, so today's talk is all about purgatory. I bet a lot of you would have been like, oh man, I knew I should have skipped this week, I don't even know who's talking. Right? Because purgatory isn't necessarily the topic that we're just like, no, I can't wait to hear that talk. Right? I'm bringing all my work friends. No, but I went to this talk on purgatory and blew my mind. One of the things that Father spoke about were the different pain that people in purgatory feel. And he said one of the most painful things that the people in purgatory feel is the missed opportunities to love. And that just smacked me in the heart. Where the people in purgatory have this opportunity there to recognize all these opportunities that God gave them to love someone for the glory of God, for the love of God, for the love of the person, and they didn't take that opportunity. They missed that chance. And when Father was giving the talk, he said, how many times have you passed a person begging on the street and you don't have cash on me? Because, I mean, let's be honest, our age group never carries cash. But like, you don't have cash on you, you don't have anything to give them, that there's nothing tactile. But he said, but wouldn't it be at least some gesture of love, some gesture of recognizing the dignity of this person to say a prayer as you passed? And I was like, he's got a point. Right? That it wouldn't cost me much. It wouldn't cost me much time at all And so as I'm going through in this spirit of trying to foster this virtue of diligence, to grow in this virtue of diligence, prayer, honest prayer as I go through my scrolls. And then making non-digital time with friends and family a priority. And making time with God with no digital interruption a daily habit. Now, if anybody like me has one of these nifty little iWatches, oh my goodness, this is such a crazy distraction at mass. Because, right? Anybody else have an iWatch? Like, or some kind of like digital watch that you're just like, okay, I'm totally going to be present for this mass. And then all of a sudden, like, your wrist starts to vibrate. And there's something super, like, the craziest, most amazing miracle is happening before my eyes. But I just can't stop myself from doing this. Right? Now, it might not count the calories that I'm burning while I'm in the mass, but would it really cost me much to take off the watch? To at least leave some space, some non-interrupted space for God. Okay, let's move on. So now we get into the vice of anger / rage / wrath. I didn't feel I had to define this one because I think everybody kind of gets that one, right? We get the anger, the rage, the wrath, yeah. So in our digital world, sometimes we seek to be constantly enraged. Has it ever happened that you know that a particular site gets your goat, gets you fired up, and in the morning you wake up and you're like, I'm gonna go see what CNN posted so I can be indignant for the rest of the day. Has that ever happened? I have been there. Like, sometimes we seek it out. Or that friend that you know you completely disagree with on absolutely everything, and you specifically go to their page because you're just like, ah! Right? Sometimes we even start to rejoice and like have that kind of like joy in this rage, this anger. And the problem, there's problems there, but the further problem is that we stop seeing people for the gift that they are, for the precious child of God before me, and we just see an ideology with an account. We completely disregard the humanity of the person. Like, no, that's a whole human with a whole life, with a whole history, and a whole story. I listened to this Matthew Kelly talk once, and I thought that this analysis was brilliant in just helping me to relax on my attacks. He said opinions, a person's opinion is formed by two things, experience and education. So oftentimes we become enraged at people for their opinion, and what formed it, they had a different experience and a different education. Obviously, I am a devout Catholic, so I believe in objective truth. So there is truth, but I should, somewhere inside of me, understand that if a person does not accept this thing that I know to be true, then, I mean, it's probably not that they're an evil person. It's just that their experience and their education has not allowed them yet to reach this place. Right? Now that's a lot more sane than, oh, this person is so evil! Why can't they see? Why are they not posting this thing? Right? Yeah. So, and in this digital world, because we start to see these people as an ideology with an account, rather than an actual person with a whole story, we get into impulsivity in a way that we wouldn't have if we were talking in person. We become impulsive and insensitive, where this person posted this, well, I'm going to post this immediately after, like, bam, 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 and this can become someone's day. If you've ever gotten involved in a back and forth internet argument, oh my goodness, can that be exhausting? That could consume an entire day, because it just becomes punch, 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 punch. The world does not need angry Catholics out there just throwing punches. Pope Francis, in his first apostolic exhortation, he talked about like the joy of the gospel, how we shouldn't have the funeral faces. We need to be joyful people. If if the only representation of Catholics that people see online is punch, you're bad, you're evil, where's the joy of the gospel? Where has it gone? So what virtues am I praying for? For prudence, where one applies right reason to the action, and meekness. A man, woman, self-possessed, where I'm not ruled by the anger. So, when I'm posting something, when I'm responding to someone, is it in smugness? Is it when I'm in a state of rage? Is it in sarcasm or in a mean spirit? We've all heard the phrase, speak the truth in love, right? Yeah? Actually, it's from the Bible, from Ephesians. Speak the truth in love. But oh, is that hard to put into practice if I'm just on the anger train? Because sometimes, instead of speak the truth in love, I prefer the feeling of a gotcha moment. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, but what about this? Gotcha. In a talk that I had with Father Jorge Obregón, this line stuck with me. He said, don't use the gift of your good catechesis as a weapon against other people. So if you've had the gift of being able to learn things about the faith, don't use it as a weapon for those who have had a different experience or different education. And I don't mean formal education necessarily, just what they have been taught is different. And if you know that you are very angry, first turn to prayer, then talk to someone who's sensible, that's not going to hype you up in your anger. Because you know that like when you're going in a texting argument back and forth, you could reach out to that one friend that's totally going to hype you up in your anger. You know what I'm talking about? Like that, you know who to turn to when you want to be hyped, but then there's the other person that you could turn to that is going to be the voice of reason. Turn to the voice of reason, not the hype man. We don't need people hyping up the anger. And we must acknowledge the anger, but in trying to foster this virtue of meekness, not allow the anger to dominate the actions that proceed. And then finally, pride. Pride being an excessive love of self or the desire to be better or more important than others. And it can also be an unhealthy preoccupation with how others see me. And my goodness, the whole entire digital world seems like a sand trap for pride. Am I right? You know what I'm saying? Like we have this intense preoccupation of how does everyone, like all of these, like that high school friend that I had like that one chemistry class with, how do they think of me when I post this thing? Does it matter? This very intense preoccupation with wanting to be a persona. There's also the temptation, this prideful temptation to have an opinion on everybody else's life and being happy to share that opinion with gossip. I don't know exactly when this happened, but once upon a time it became a thing that if someone posted something on social media, somewhere in our brains we decided to translate that as it's fair game to now make that the topic of my conversation. Because they posted it, right? Is that about it? Let's see. Does that sound like the right thing to do for this child of God, who is a person endowed with dignity by their Creator, who is loved by God into existence? So we become kind of these in our own minds, like these master puppeteers of being able to say, well, oh, I saw that this person got this new job. Well, I don't think that they should have gotten that job. I think they should have done this. Oh, did you see this person got engaged to that person? We start to have it like we know it all. And we start to see people more like movie characters that we can critique than actual people with a whole life. And then, especially in these times, there's this feeling that I must know everything, have an answer for everything in order to be relevant. Though that's an impossible standard. I can't possibly have a full opinion about everything happening everywhere on the planet all at once. How? But the social world definitely definitely expects that of us. So, what virtue should I seek? Humility. St. Thomas Aquinas, it says it consists in keeping oneself within one's own bounds. Or in this, if you ever want a book to really go in on humility, it's a little book by a priest, Father Cajetan de Bergamo, Humility of Heart. Amazing book. And in it, he defines humility as knowing myself as I am and to know God. And so, who am I? I'm a sinner. But by God's grace, a child of God. And who is the person whose page I just looked at? They're a sinner. But a child of God. Created in His image. So, how do I practice this virtue? What are some of the ways to practice this virtue of humility? Search my heart for the intention in the things that I text and that I post. And at some point, bring those things to the Lord. Like, if I'm noticing in myself that I keep posting things in a certain way because I'm seeking this specific reaction. Now, a post isn't just a random thing that we do. Like, there's thought that goes into that. And we should watch those thoughts and notice, like, is there something that's leading me to do these things consistently in this way? And if so, why? And that is awesome. If anyone has ever struggled and be like, I want to have a bigger prayer life, but I don't really know what to talk to the Lord about. There you go. Start talking to Him about those whys, those little whys of why do I choose to do these things? Or I've noticed this pattern, Lord. Can we talk about this? Can we talk about this pattern that I see that keeps springing up in me? Can we talk about the way that, I've noticed that lately, I just keep being the master boss and puppet master to the whole universe, and I'm not liking that. That's not looking good. Why am I doing this? What's going on there, Lord? It's a good way to just start to truly just know myself as I am and allow Him to step into that. People's lives are not my soap opera to critique. Now, again, as a Latina, I grew up watching the novelas. The order of my house was this: 6 o'clock, rosary, the whole family. It didn't matter if you were Catholic or not. You had to be in my grandma's room, and you were going to be praying the rosary at 6 o'clock. Followed by the novela, the Spanish soap operas, while playing bingo for change. So this is the order of the day. So yeah, novelas sell. There's a reason why novels exist, that fiction exists, because it's interesting to us humans. We find satisfaction in seeing the lives of people unfold before us. But if it's a fictional character is very different than an actual person in my life. And in this, the thought, the humility of a maybe. Once upon a time, I was having a conversation with my spiritual director and talking about some of these things basically about assuming intention in people. Where I was just like, yeah, I'm really bad with that. I just jump to this conclusion and I stay on that train where I assume that the only possible reason why this person did this was because of this bad intention. And I was given the challenge then to introduce maybe. And the challenge she gave me was, when you start to think, okay, I know for sure this intention, say maybe, and then come up with the most charitable possible reason why that person could have done that. Challenge yourself. Imagine, what's the most charitable reason why that person did that? And that burns, that activity burns. It hurts so bad because you're like, no, I just want to be indignant. I don't want to have to think about charitable reasons. But this is a person. This is a person that deserves at least some consideration in this way. And also, very important in our Catholic world, we like to fraternity correct people that we have no fraternity with. If I have no fraternity, if I don't have a relationship with you, how can I fraternally correct you? what it looks like if there's no fraternity first, if I'm trying to correct you about something that I've seen, it just looks like policing and judgment. And it makes the faith unattractive. So, when I see something, and I know it's wrong, and all of my experience, all of my good catechesis, all of these wonderful talks that I've come to, I see it, I know it's wrong. Here are some of the things to consider. Absolutely pray. Pray for the person. Whether you know them well or not, you can always pray. And then if you know the person, and you have the kind of relationship where they already know that they are loved by you, then approach gently with fraternal correction. If it's a person that you don't have that kind of a relationship with, they may already know where you stand on things. You could say, hey, you know where I stand on this. I saw that you posted this. I would like to understand you better. Can we have a conversation? I'm just interested in hearing your thoughts. And that's how you build fraternity. Where one day you might be able to get to the place of fraternal correction, but for its own sake, just to know this person and to allow them to be known. So, in this entire talk, it may have seemed like we just did a communal examination of conscience. It certainly felt like I was doing it felt very examination of conscience to me. And it could seem overwhelming. And as Father Casey said, we normally don't just struggle with one vice. Vices usually come like in a package. But if there was one thing that spoke to you that you thought, okay, even if you tuned out most of the talk, but if there was one thing, I invite you, bring it to the Lord. Have a conversation. That's a perfect place to start a conversation and say, I noticed this. What's up? Let's talk. And ask for the grace to practice the virtue, especially in those moments when we notice that the temptations are creeping in. And at the end of our lives, like when we're on our deathbeds, the likes, the shares, the tweets, the comments, they don't mean a thing. Using the opportunities God gave me to love those around me in this life, at this moment in history, with the people that He's placed in my life, that will matter. Amen.